The sermon title on this Easter morning is Return to Normal. And it's a very difficult Easter sermon to deliver. Because it would have been easiest if one could do the sermon just focusing on a metaphysical meaning of Easter. Focusing on life hereafter, everlasting life, and the sacrifice of Jesus and saving us from eternal death. But I think that would have deprived us experiencing the power of God's presence and the strong message of Easter, of hope and of renewal, because of the presence of God's love in and among us. But to speak of Easter not only in metaphysical sense requires us to wade into the present, into our circumstances, in a life uprooted, disrupted, in so many ways, a life characterized by uncertainty, by anxiety, and quite often with fear, as so many lives are prematurely brought to conclusion through COVID. I know in these days, words have additional, and I think special, weight and meaning. They are heard in a different way than what would normally be the case. Therefore, for me, with you living through this pandemic, I want to confess that I really don't understand the majority of things that are going on. And I therefore want to speak words with great responsibility, realizing that words in these days, I think, have to be spoken with authenticity, with caution, with integrity, with measured compassion, but above all, in truth. So bear with me as I try to speak a few words, thinking of the statistics that we have become used to seeing on a TV screen or on a computer screen, or on a phone perhaps. I have no idea what it means when 17 million Americans file for unemployment assistance. There is no way that I can wrap my mind around that or even begin to understand what the implications now and for the long-term future could and will be for us. I have no idea what it means that in Essex County, I think the death toll this morning due to COVID was around 80 people, and that has probably been updated since. I have no idea what it means that 500,000 people in the US have been infected with this disease. And having said that, I want to say that in this period in my life, trying to make enough sense so that one can get through every day to the next, confining your day to the living of every day, I am trying to find things of beauty and things that are good, that can speak to me of beauty and of the goodness and testify to the presence of God. Two of the most beautiful images that I encountered in this whole process are the following. The first was for me an image of a dolphin and some fish in the canals of Venice, where the water was clear enough so that you could see almost to the bottom of the canal and see that face of a dolphin that we always call the friendly face of a dolphin. That spoke to me in a very special way. The other image that I found astounding and testifying to serene beauty was that of an image of the Himalayan mountains in the north, a picture taken from the northern province Punjab, where it says that for the first time in 30 years, the mountains were visible over 100 miles away. People could see the beautiful snow-capped peaks of the Himalayas. The other thought that was with me and that struck me every morning as I get up early after our cat wakes me up. He wants to go outside. So in letting him out, I've noticed and listened to the beauty of silence. There is no humming that sounds like a drone, a distant drone of I-95 or Route 1. There are no aircraft passing overhead to come in or to land at Logan. One can hear each bird more clearly. And somehow, as I pause and linger outside, later when I go into my coffee and watch the sunrise, it testifies to me to the beauty that is around us. But it also speaks to me, unfortunately, the truth that this beauty is only there, that we can observe and enjoy it now because of the absence of people, of the absence of a regular and a normal life filled with the activities that we fill the life with, going around our regular business. And some of the images, or many of the images that we've also become accustomed to, spoke to me of the absence of life in cities that were normally vibrant and bustling. It reminded me of this verse, the opening verse in the book of Lamentations, where it speaks of streets that are empty and the city that was the most beautiful in the mind of the Hebrew people, the Israelites, that was now filled with terror, devoid of any glamour and any vibrancy and any sign of life. It was a city indeed struck by terror and filled with terror, just as so many of our cities are experiencing that. And for us, as we try to live our confined and hold up lives, we experience something of that terror as well. As we miss the things that, and the small rituals that we build our lives with and from. It struck me that in the latter phase where we were asked to wear masks as well, when we go into any public space, that I cannot see any facial expressions, that we have to hear a smile because you can no longer see the smile. So often I think when I would wander into the grocery store, when we have to get something that is essential, I say to myself, a return to normalcy would be nice. I would even not mind being blocked off by somebody who's parked their car right in the middle of the aisle, oblivious of what is going on in a crowded store and just looking for that specific bottle of spices or that specific nut that they are looking for in the aisle. I would gladly put up with that without getting irritated. What we are experiencing was brought about by a virus that cannot call it an organism because it's on that border between the inorganic and the organic. It is on that line between the material and life. But what we're experiencing was brought about by this invisible thing, this virus, wreaking havoc, bringing terror and fear home. And that we encounter as well in the passage that we read from the Gospel of Mark, that well-known passage of the women visiting the grave. On that day after the Sabbath, when they were probably saying to each other, now that this week of terror is over, now that Jesus has died, let us go to the grave and try to resume normalcy by honoring him, doing what is necessary according to our culture for his body, and do our grieving and mourning, acknowledging defeat and acknowledging that the terror of the Roman Empire has won out. And then the unusual, the shocking, that which filled them perhaps with amazement, but according to this text, mostly with fear, to the extent that they ran away and that they didn't even want to discuss it and talk about it. His body was not there, and there was this being sitting there, a young man saying to them, his body is not there. He has gone ahead of you, go to Galilee, meet him there. And if we take that description of the gospel according to Mark, that the women ran away in fear as the end of the story, we are wrong. Because the fact that we are dealing with that text today, with this story, bears testimony to the fact that they indeed went ahead and encountered the risen Jesus in Galilee. And in a very short time, in hyper-compressed time, these women and other disciples were moved to the realization that the message of Jesus and the message of hope and the message of God's love and the message especially of God's love with us is not dependent on the physical presence of Jesus. They encountered him in their lives. They encountered him in people being changed and living in a new and a different way. To the extent that through the testimony that they brought to us, and that was written in other Gospels and other texts, and also in the text according to Mark, the other endings of this Gospel that we also find in our Bible, the powerful message of renewal, of new beginnings, of new life, of new hope. To the extent that it became the narrative of renewal, of hope, of God with us, even if there is physical separation. As this invisible virus is wreaking havoc, I think the Spirit is inviting us, as we experience the result of the presence of that virus, to also be opened and to experience enlightenment and to try and fully grasp and imagine the invisible presence of God with us, but to also make ourselves available and open ourselves and be willing to be awakened to the result of God's love with us. Because the presence of God's love in us and around us is made visible through so many acts of compassion, so many acts of extreme courage, especially of health workers, facing the danger every day, so often without the necessary protective equipment, of the tireless people enabling us to live with social distancing, delivering for us, a danger to their own lives, what is necessary. These expressions of God's love, the result of the invisible presence of God all around us, testifies to us of the power of Easter. And we are invited this Easter to see and imagine a world fashioned according to God's love, as we yearn for a return to normal. I want to take you back to the passages that Amy read to us. There is this world described in the book of Lamentations that bears resemblance to what we are experiencing. It is human life, but it is human life in a strange form. It is, to a large extent, the poor imitation of the fullness of human interaction and human life. Then on the other hand, we have that beautiful passage, that poem that gives space to enter into the world of the image of the new world, constructed in God's grace. A world not of merit and of performance and of position and of standing. A world not of being treated differently because of privilege or power, but a world constructed around God's grace, compassion, and justice. What makes the transition from the world of lamentations and the world under siege possible to this world, a world that gives expression to the essence of God, is this Easter narrative, where we are enlightened, where we muster the courage to open ourselves to God's presence in and among us, and to allow us, ourselves, our families, our nation, this world, to be transformed, to be changed, so that we can transition from the world of lamentations, this poor imitation of flourishing human life, to the life according to God, what Jesus called the kingdom of God. Therefore, this Easter, let us give ourselves to being enlightened, so that we are able, as that image that I spoke about, the Himalaya mountains visible, because the smog has cleared. Let us open ourselves so that God's Spirit can renew us, so that we can return to normal, also realizing and acknowledging that we have to ask the question, what normal is? What is this normal that we want to return to? And asking the deep and serious and sometimes painful questions that will bring us to the point where we acknowledge and realize that normal for many people on this planet is hell. For at least 1 billion people on the planet that live in poverty, and around 130 million Americans, where the uncertainty we are experiencing about where will food come from, Will I be able to have a home, or where will I be allowed to sleep tonight? How will I pay for medical or for emergency? That constitutes normal for too many people. And I want to ask you the question on this Easter morning: if a virus can change the world to the extent that it is doing, why is it not possible for the world to be changed by love, by compassion, and for our world to become a world of the meritless grace of God? I want to read you a poem of an Indian poet, Rabindranath Tagore, very titled, "Where the mind is without fear." Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where the words come out from the depth of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where a clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert and sand of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by thee in ever-widening thought and action into that heaven of freedom. My Father, let my country awake. I want to ask you on this Easter morning, let the Spirit of the living God, who is present in us, around us, awaken us into that heaven of freedom. Let it awaken our minds, our hearts, our hands. For each in our personal lives, for us as families, also for us as church, and for this world, into that heaven of freedom. Our God, let us all awake. Amen.